Okay, good morning, all. I think we're going to start getting going here. We have folks that are still entering the webinar, but that can kind of continue on as we get started. Just going to do a couple of introductions here, and then we are going to get into our important webinar that we've got this morning that has become one of the more popular webinars that we have throughout the year, and it's a bit of a primer for our annual convention then as well. So once again, good morning all. Thank you for joining us today. This is part 3 of our unemployment process unpacked. Having a smooth running process is an essential element in employee driver retention. As UC claims our ongoing piece of school transportation employment cycle, we're proud to have subject matter experts to join us and that deal with the unemployment issues and lead us in a discussion on best practices and solutions for your employees. As I mentioned, this is a bit of a sneak peek for our session that we'll be having this year at the annual convention this spring. Joining us today are two folks that I'm sure you are quite familiar with, as they've been leading us through this webinar and through these sessions in the past, and we are very fortunate to have them join us. Deputy Secretary Maria Macus, who is the Deputy Secretary for Unemployment Compensation Programs in the Commonwealth of PA. In her position, she's responsible for the oversight and administration of the Commonwealth's UC programs, including the Office of UC Benefits, Policy, the Office of UC Service Centers, and the Office of UC Tax Services. Prior to this, Maria was the Deputy Chief Counsel for UC, having come to that position from the Department of Corrections, where she served as counsel in litigation section, representing DOC employees in litigation before state and federal courts. Maria graduated from Elizabethtown with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy. She also earned her Juris Doctorate from Dickinson School of Law at Penn State University. Jodie Quibell is also joining us today. Jodie is the Vice President of Administration for Reliance Student Transportation. She began working as a guidance secretary at the high school she attended, and as well as being a 30-year career fitness professional, 2 dream jobs. She began driving a home-to-school run for a local school bus contractor and was quickly approached about being on the safety committee, which led to becoming a safety supervisor. In 2017, Jodie began working for Reliance Student Transportation as VP of Administration and played a role in executive leadership. In the past 2 years, she has helped to streamline recruiting and hiring, revamped our training program to great success, and plays a hands-on role in daily operations. Before we get started here, I don't want to keep us from anything else, but as you all know, we do have our antitrust statement that has always come in. Unfortunately, it is not in front of my computer, and my computer is not really agreeing with me this morning. But just as a note, our antitrust statement that we have used in the past does continue to apply here. If you have any questions in regards to that, we will be sending that out after this webinar. As a note, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on the PSBA new website in the members only section. We hope to get that up this afternoon. So once again, thank you all for joining us today. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we can make sure that we get to them. Jodie and Maria are very used to this, so we're very fortunate to having them today. And with that, I will let them take it away. Jodie, Maria, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. This is our 2025 UC seminar. And basically, I'm going to go through step-by-step process. For if you have new drivers who have just joined you maybe this year, maybe they've never had the need to have a claim with unemployment, and maybe they will be falling into that this year. We want to do it at this time of the year because we know we're getting close. We're in the downhill for the end of the school year, so everybody should have some information for when the end of school is, usually at the end of May, beginning of June. Okay, so I'm going to start with the website. They are in need of having an account with the website for the unemployment benefits to be filed and to file a claim. So they will have some requirements to do that. And to do that, they'll have to have an ID and a password. And I always just, just as a precautionary thing, I tell my folks that they need to keep that in a safe place so that they will have it, because they'll continuously use it when they sign on and off of the website. So we're talking about qualifications for our bus and van drivers. Some of you also might have monitors and perhaps some office people who are only employed during the school year. So one of the things as a qualifier is you must be in a layoff situation from work. And I always tell them, when you're getting close to that last week, if you've made up all your snow days or what have you, and you have your last day picked, it's good to know which day of the week they have to do their claim or open their claim. So if they're working a partial week where their last day of work is Monday through Thursday, then they would want to file that same week on Friday or Saturday before midnight. If they're working the full week, Monday through Friday, if it works out for them, then they would not be able to do their claim until Sunday. And then just as a reminder, they have to have had earnings in 2 quarters of the last 5. I usually just kind of preface this with my people because they always have lots of questions about whether they're going to qualify or not. So that decision is up to the department. So I just tell them, put your information in. They will let you know whether you qualify or not. So we had gotten this screen last year, the top part of it, and it kind of really helps to understand what quarters they're looking at when they're making their determination. So if we get, this was what we had for last year, they're going to use those first 4 quarters that are listed there. So they look at the first 4 quarters of the last 5 completed calendar quarters. Obviously, they wouldn't be counting the April through June because they wouldn't be completed yet. So they would be looking at January through December of 2024. So in this example, if we use this example on June 1st, if they're applying for their benefits, then their base year is going to be all the 4 quarters in 2024. And like I said before, they must have sufficient wages in at least 2 of those quarters. Now, if they're deciding maybe the school's a little longer, they have an extended school year, and maybe they're not going to apply until maybe after July 1st, then it would be the base year based on the quarters that are listed here. And again, they would have to have sufficient wages for at least 2 of those 4 quarters. And one thing that was interesting, because sometimes they think that it has to all be with your company. The wages do not need to be with a single company. They look at the total wages earned for all the employers that they would have had, because some folks just come to us, but they came from another job. So that would all be figured in. Another thing, that I try to tell them is that if they do not have an account and they don't currently have an ID Me account, that they would have to open one. And so this happens during the initial claim filing process. They are asked to do it. So there's a process that you go through. They would have to have an ID and a password to get into that too. And as we go through some of the screens, you'll see how it goes back and forth from the unemployment website to the ID Me website, and then brings them back to where they were so that they can get these 3 requirements that have to be done so that they can create an account. If they already have one, then that's the one they're going to use. And they're just going to use their ID and their password and go through the same process, but they won't have to do all the upfront work to get the account started. So generally, the claims are active for 1 year, and there is an initial waiting week when you open it. So most people usually understand that process. So the opening and closing, or I say the initial claim when they open it, one of the things that comes up was, well, what if somebody calls me from work and they say, oh, we have a trip that you could do, is that going to disqualify me? What's going to happen there? If I make too much money, then how do I get back in if I'm not, because I'm not guaranteed work all summer. So you can reopen a claim. They just have to remember that, you know, all the claims for that year would be kept together. And when we get to the dashboard, they will also see, you know, what their claim year is, because I have folks do that too. They're not sure of their year. They forget when they opened it. So the thing of it is to remember that if they're not working their regular work hours, then they actually could be able to have a benefit, like a partial benefit that they can get. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically, the other thing that I had to tell folks because they were new to unemployment is the process for opening your claim is different than the process for certifying your claim each week to let them know how much money you did or did not make. 1 year, I don't know, it just seemed like we must have had a lot of people who had never had an unemployment claim before, and they opened the claim and then they were done and they didn't understand why they weren't getting any monies. And then we had to go back and educate them as to you have to go in each week and do that claim or that certification process so that they know how much to pay you. Okay, so after you open the initial claim, you would receive information about the amounts of your weekly benefit that you're enabled to get. And remember, they take the largest earning quarter in those quarters that they are looking at. So when I say this to some of my folks, the first question that they ask me, which was kind of different for me because I just didn't think of people not knowing this. But they asked me what a quarter means. So I usually try to lay that out for them, that it's every 3 months, that's a quarter. And then they understand what we're talking about when they're looking at the quarters. So we're going to get into what some of the screens look like now when you go into your site at your portal. And to be eligible for those benefits, remember at least 2 of the quarters of the last 5 that they're looking at, that they would have to have qualifying earnings. And then basically it's very user-friendly. It's great. I love this site, you know, it's better than the last one, absolutely. And it seems like it keeps getting more refined every year. So that's great too. I appreciate that. So they're just going to click next to continue here. My slides were from a couple years ago. I know that the home page here changed a little bit. They now have a dashboard at the front, at the top, and it gives you lots of information right up there in little boxes. So that's really nice for our folks. But basically, the reason for showing this screen for me through my presentations is that it shows you under the unemployment services what they can do. And the second one listed there, start an unemployment claim. They can do this to either file their initial claim, or if they have a claim that's already open and they're still in that year, they can reopen their existing claim from there. So of course, welcome to the benefits system. It gives them a lot of information about the system. And I like that it has these little links someplace, because if someone is really not familiar, they can click on the links, get a lot of information also from the links. So on this screen, what I was trying to show too is a very nice feature when they changed to this setting was that at the top, you have that line of the filing process. And so the green will tell them exactly where they are. So from start to finish, when they see that they are complete over with their green line, then they know that they've done it and they've gotten their submission made for their claim. And it just kind of keeps them on track a little bit. Again, the older system didn't really have that. And so people thought sometimes they were finished and they weren't finished. With this one, it's really no question. You kind of know where you are. So that's really nice. So one of the first questions that asked on the site is about a workers' compensation. And this kind of threw some of my folks too, because in their mind, they're looking at opening an unemployment claim. And for some reason, they would think, oh, yeah, it's an unemployment. I'm going to say yes to this question. So I really just tell them to be careful this first question. You know, most people are going to say no to this. However, if they did have an on-the-job injury, they would want to select yes, and then it would take them further, you know, in a different direction. But most people are going to be no. It's just that they have to be aware of what the question is that it's being asked. Work history, when they're looking at their work history, of course, now again, my dates are a little behind, but they're going to ask if they had, work between a date and a date, and they're going to, of course, answer the appropriate question for themselves. That applies to themselves. And then as we go through here, you're going to see also, as we go through, you're going to see that green line going across to show them where they are in the process. Have you worked in 2 or more states? Again, the appropriate answer, we're very close here to Maryland. We have a lot of folks that kind of come across the line sometimes. So maybe they would have worked in Maryland before they came to work for us. So they want to answer that appropriately. Then talking about states where they actually have claimed unemployment in the last 12 months, have they claimed it? They're going to say yes or no. And then excuse me, they can select the states that apply for themselves. Federal service, if they're involved in any of that, of course, they're going to answer the appropriate answer to that. Military service, the same thing. And then they're going to get into their login information. So if this is the first time they're making a claim application, you'll have to fill these in. Excuse me. If you're coming back onto the site and they already used it before, the information is usually already there, and you can see that some of that is in for them on the one that I used as my example. They're gonna want to put their email address in, obviously, their personal information, and just continue. They're just going to click on to continue with that. When we get to this as part of the registration, this is where the ID Me comes into play. They have to push this button and select this. If they already have an account, they'll just put their information in. If they don't have an account, this is where it'll give them directions on how they create an account here. So I'm going to use as my example, since this is supposed to be an initial claim, they're going to be creating an account. These are some of the scene when it takes you and redirects you to the ID Me site. These are some of the screens that you're going to see. After they set everything up, it kind of goes back and forth, just like many things that we're used to in banking or, buying something online. They're going to text you. They're going to text you a code, or they'll call you for the code. You're going to put the code in that they're sent you. And then it comes back to this. They want you to stop and read this, understand that now after this is completed, they're going to be sending you back to where you started over in the unemployment site. And then you'll just automatically come back. So continuing with your information, obviously they're going to need your residence. So the folks would fill that in. Phone numbers, very important. If somebody has to get in touch with you, phone call might be a way to do that. So I know they used email addresses. You can get information that way, but they also can get phone calls. So always important to keep this up to date too. The preferred notification method of getting the notifications, they're going to just select, this is a pull down menu and they have a couple options. So they're going to select the option of their choosing, whichever one they're choosing to get their notifications from. Of course, then they're going to continue with personal information about dependents, citizenship, whether they want to claim that they have a disability or not. They're going to just pick the applicable answer to the question. Their education. Okay, and then we get into some of the employment information. The one thing that I see here that caught our folks were the 2 that I have circled. Did you become unemployed or partially unemployed, as a result of a foreign trade competition? So that answer is no, because we just standardly have school about 175 to 177 days a year. And so that would not be our reason for making the claim. And then this other one, the next one, always gave them a little bit of a thing too, because obviously they work for a contractor. They are not employed by the school district, so they have to say no. Some of our folks say, well, I drive for the school, so they would answer yes, and that would not be what they would want to answer if they are working for a contractor. And our last one, in the last 18 months, have you worked as a professional athlete? Most people will say no, but hey, kudos to those who do. It's wonderful. Your employment status, are you self-employed? Normally that's a no for our folks, but it could be maybe they have, you know, some type of a self-employment, or maybe they're a family member of the business, so they're somehow associated with them. Are they in an elective or appointed position? So we do have some of our folks who are, and so they would have to answer, of course, appropriately. Okay, getting into the job title, what is your desired job title? We just tell them to print that right in there or type it right in, school bus driver. I use the same school bus driver for, you know, for our van drivers also. Kind of puts them in the same category. As far as the occupation, it is bus driver, school, or special client. And I did put the code there, the 533-02200. That is the code. If you type that in, it'll get you to where you need to be. Okay, it's asking about military service in the last 180 consecutive days, and whether they have been classified as a disabled veteran. I know some of our contractors have very good success providing jobs for veterans, so that's really nice. Then we're going to get to the payment information. So what type of benefit payment would you like to receive? So I think mostly, you know, people do it by direct deposit, or you can get a debit card where they load it and then they would be able to use it from there. What they want you to do is they want you to really understand what your options are. So you have to click a link here, and you can say that, you know, you've read the link, or they know that you've read the link, so it gives you some explanation, and then you can confirm which one you want. So on this particular one, the person's screens that I used, they had already picked a debit card, so this is just saying that they were confirming that they were going to do that. Now, again, this is on your initial. If you've already been a claimant and you're returning, you're going to see a little bit different. So they will give this screen. And then again, at the bottom, you're going to have to say that you've read that the unemployment compensation disclosure information, and that's the blue link. So they do have to click on the link and hopefully read what's there, and then they will be directed back here. Once they're directed back, you see how the box is grayed out. It won't be grayed out anymore, and they can put a check in there that they have taken a look at that information. Okay, payment deductions. As far as the deductions, this is just my suggestion to my folks because it works best for us here. They want to know if you want a federal tax withheld. So most of my folks do, because they don't want to get to the end of the year. Remember, it is a form of income, so it would be taxable. So they don't want to get to the end of the year and find out that they owe money for this particular part of their, you know, the benefit that they're getting. So they usually have that 10% withheld when, you know, from their checks when they get it, or their money when they get it. So I think it's kind of a best practice for most folks who are driving bus for us. Obviously, they can say no if they would like to. Okay, again, more information regarding themselves. And then, of course, they're going to answer the questions, whatever is applicable to them. So now you're kind of seeing how we're progressing on our progress bar up at the top. And so now we're going to kind of go into our claim. So the one thing that they have to have is work history. And so they're going to be able to put in, if it doesn't already come up for them, their previous employment history. So you can see from my example, the person who we were using, they obviously had an employer of Reliance, has the information, and they could select this as their last employer. And we'll see that as we go through our screens here. But now we're sort of into the work history because they'll need to gather that information to see where you stand. So if by chance you didn't, or they don't see the current one listed of the company that they're working for, they would actually have to add it. And at the bottom, it says additional employment history. Are there any other employment history items that you would like to add? So if they're working for us and Reliance is not listed there, they would have to say yes. It would direct them out a little bit to a different screen. They can put our information in, and then it'll be there in their history. Sometimes my folks just go past and they say no, but Reliance isn't up there, and maybe this is, the only thing that they have listed. It'll stop them and say, oh, you have to have something up there. And then it kind of gets them back on track again, that they have to put their employer in there. So to search for the employer, I actually just give our number to them. And so they have that, they can just type it in, but you can click on the link and then search for the appropriate entity and then enter that in. Once you enter that in, it should bring up the information for the company, as you can see here. And they can make changes to that. Our number changed a few years ago, and our address changed because we moved to a different corporate location. So they can make sure that that's all up to date. The NAICS code, that is our code for school busing 485410. So they can just type it in if you provide it for them, or again, they can search for the code with the link. So now again, it's going to start asking them some questions that just pertain to them. In this particular question, the first one, they're going to give a certain amount of money. Did you make at least this amount of money from this employer? Again, they're going to answer whichever is in their case. Is this your last employer? Normally that's going to be yes for most of our folks at the end of the school year. And is this employer considered a temporary agency? Of course, we are not. We are a regular employer, and we are not an agency, so they would want to say no to that question. And then the employer's name should show up there. Okay, now talking about the position that they have, our drivers are regular and they are part-time. We do not have full-time bus drivers. So they would want to put in the whole and partial hours. That is their norm during the week. They would also want to put their gross salary in for the week. And then if their salary is commission-based, which most of them I would assume would not be, but that would be a yes or no question, whichever is applicable, and when they began to work for us, for this employer. Are they currently employed with the employer? That question used to catch my folks too. They would say yes, because they know they're employed, they're just not working over the summer. But that answer has to be no, because they are not currently working their regular work hours during the summer for us. Even if they fill in a day or do a trip for us, it's not what they would normally be getting paid for on a weekly basis. So then it asks about the gross earnings this week, and that's another thing that I kind of have to explain to my folks what number they're looking for, but they would fill that number in, and then approximately the hours worked for the week that they are just filing for. So if they've worked a full week and now they're into the next week and they're filing their claim, they haven't worked any this week since then, so they would want to put 0. Also, the reason for separation, we just simply say layoff. It is in the pull down menu. There's several to choose from, and there might be a different one that applies to your company. But in our case, the layoff is what applies. So then the next question became very important. Is this layoff a result of a voluntary layoff option? And, again, our folks thought, yeah, I know I don't work in the summer, so I'm voluntarily saying I'm not going to work. But actually that answer is no, because it's not the situation for the voluntary layoff. So that would be a no. The last day work, they're just going to put that date in, very easy. Did the employer tell you that you would be recalled for your job? Most of us obviously are going to hold that job, that position for the next school year. So that would usually be a yes, unless there's some reason that you're not going to extend an invitation for them to return. The anticipated recall date, they're going to put that in. By now, we all know when the schools are going to be starting next year. It's been, passed in the board minutes, so we can put that date in. And then, do you have a recall notice in writing from your employer? And yes, we give our employees a recall notice. I don't actually have them send them in. We'll get to that a little bit later, but we do have it if somebody needs to see it. But I'm pretty sure that as a bus driver, no one really needs to see that unless we aren't your only employer. Maybe there's a reason that they need to see it. So they just kind of hold on to it. Was the employment with a public or private school? Obviously, no. And then it starts to ask some questions about their particular things like stocks and whether they have those things. Most of those answers for our folks are no. Benefit payment information, also asking about severance pay, retirement and pensions. They're going to just, again, answer as appropriate. So now we're going to get through the work history here. When you get your information in, there is going to be the screen that comes up, which talks about the monetary values that you have earned in your quarters, and that you see here from the information that was provided from a couple of years ago. And then they are going to ask if that all is what matches with what you have. And obviously they have to agree or not. If they work for other employers, then they would have to make sure that everything is in for them. And if for some reason they say, oh, I didn't work for Reliance this year, then they would have to say, I did not work at one or more of these employers listed above, according to their listing. So now we're ready to put that claim in. It asks them, do you want to file this now? And it kind of gives them all the regulations. I think everybody gets all that information when they do their filing process. There will be a lot of information that they get so that they understand how the process works. So they're going to say, yes, I want to file my claim. When they file it, or when they get to the next screen, then here's where they are, because they said they wanted to file it now. You see now your green line is complete. Everything has been checked off as complete. I usually ask my folks to either take a picture of this if they don't have a printer at home available, or if they have a printer, I ask them to print it out and keep them with their records so that they do have a confirmation number. And that way it kind of keeps everything clean for them. If anybody has any questions, they can just refer to the confirmation number. So as of this point, they are complete. They're done. The screen, actually, there's a screen missing before this one where it talks about those acknowledgements. They do have to check off each of those bullet points that they understand those and that they are agreeing to them. And once they do that, then they get this complete screen. So right now, as far as their claim, they are complete. So what the system usually does next is they send you out to the other link, I guess, that goes with this, as far as those who would need to make a registration and a work search, because obviously they're not employed anymore. For our folks, they do not need to do this because they are exempt from that. And we'll talk a little bit more about the exemptions that might apply to our folks as bus drivers or school van drivers, monitors as such. So they can just usually, when it takes them out to this site, there's an X in the top right. They can just X out of this one. I wanted to share the site here above too, because this actually is information really designed to help our bus drivers and our van drivers. It discusses questions that they might have, or maybe they forget something, or maybe it just wasn't covered with them, but things like when they should open their claim. When they open it, if your last week of work was not after a full week, then what do you do? It's some of the things that we've discussed here in the presentation, but they might forget those things. When they're asked about their gross earnings, what does that mean? Because some people aren't sure what that means. If you're asked if there's a voluntary layoff option, what does that mean? And that helps them to determine what their answer should be. The exemptions when they have a recall date. So as a school bus driver, they are exempt from, if they have that recall date in a letter, what have you, or it might be a form that your company uses, then they don't have to do some of the things. They just have to have that information available in case somebody asks for it. And there's many more questions there that are listed there. It just very nice, helpful. It was added maybe a year or so ago, to help our drivers out so that they have the information that they need to go forward. So that's all I have for you. It seems like a very simple, easy process. Sometimes it is, and sometimes our folks just get a little off from, answering the questions. They might have answered something incorrectly, or it took them a different direction. And, so we're always there to help them. My idea is the more I can help them, the more they're going to appreciate it. They're going to come back to us next year. If they're having problems with that summertime issue, or the situation of not having work, some of them, they get frustrated, or in years past, they've gotten frustrated and they say, I'll just go get another job. Obviously, we want to curtail that because we want them to come back to us in the school bus industry. So I'm going to open it up to questions for anybody. Jerry, if you want to take the questions, or if you have any questions, we'll try to help everybody out if we can.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, great. Thank you, Jody. Very much appreciate this, and very much appreciate, you running through all of this, and it's always a big help. So before I get started on questions, just want to give a reminder. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or put them in the question and answer section. And I will run through them as we get them. We did have a couple of questions that did come through, so we will get to that. And then just also a point, and this was a question, this webinar will be available on the PSBA website probably this afternoon. I don't think I'm going to get to it till this afternoon, but we will be sending out an email letting everyone know that this webinar will be available there. Additionally, and Jody, correct me if I'm wrong here, this presentation will also be available. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You're good with that? Okay. I just wanted to make sure, I know we're not trading nuclear secrets here, but
yeah, no, it's usually helpful. And actually that's what I do in May when we have our safety meeting. I usually basically they sign up for it if they are interested in it and they need that help, that little extra help. Then I will get the presentation out to them so they actually can go screen by screen, kind of going through their presentation and their claiming of their filing of their claim. And it's awesome. I mean, we went from, spending hours and hours, probably, I think the first year, I think we spent like between 800 and 1,000 hours helping people. And, we've gone to, we have a handful of questions each year. That's it. So it's very helpful. They follow along and they do great.
That's phenomenal. And thank you for this. I remember when we had our first meeting with the deputy secretary, Maria, she said, she's like, hey, we're working to try and, teach people how to fish, how to get through this.
Yep.
And
no, absolutely. Jody did a fabulous job. And I appreciate the partnership. And I think there's something very empowering about people knowing how to do something and not having anxiety when they're doing it, and being able to walk away and know that they didn't need help with something. We're always here to help, and we're happy to do it. But I think Jody has done a really good job for the drivers in giving them the tips and tricks they need to navigate the application. And I did see one question in the chat, and then I got kicked out. But when I jumped back on, I wanted to emphasize that letter of recall. That is always a source of questions from folks, because you do not, first of all, need to submit that. If you have it, great. If we want to see it, we will ask you for it. Very often we are constantly hiring new people, and they, unfortunately, sometimes in the process of learning, will give out misinformation, and you will have what that question alluded to, which was drivers being told, oh, you need to provide this. So no, but hold on to it. That's just my one piece of advice there. So back to you, Jerry.
No, that's great. Thank you. Because that was just what I was about to ask, about that recall letter. And so, no, I greatly appreciate that. The other question, and I will admit, Jodie, I might have missed if you put this in there, but this one also probably goes back to you, Maria, then too. If you have issues while you are going through, what would you recommend? I know
Yeah.
we were talking
Okay.
about this before and how helpful the chat portion
Yeah.
has been.
So I'll say a couple things. I would never, the service centers are notoriously busy on Mondays and Tuesdays. So, for example, the wait times today were 22 minutes. But then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you won't have any wait times and no busy signals. So, if you want to talk to someone on the phone, I would call Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. Or I would use the chat feature if you're comfortable doing that. That connects you with a service center employee who in real time who could answer your questions. It operates much like a chat with any other website that has a chat feature where you type in your questions and we have someone on the other end who can answer them and give you any help that you may need. But I do understand a lot of people prefer to talk on the phone, so I would do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Yeah, so that's what I would do.
That's great. Thank you, Maria. Yeah, no, and I know that that's one of those items that a lot of folks do hear about. And I know that we've had folks on here that have mentioned in the past, that they've sometimes had to help walk through the employee through that. They may not have a computer, but that chat item
Yeah,
sounds like it's been
it's
very
a good
successful.
feature. Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's great.
And if anybody has any questions about that too, I'm glad to share some. I've helped people through it a lot, actually. And I will tell them that, it's like any other one, just like Maria said, the first thing that you get is Paula, and Paula is a robot. So you have to get past Paula, and sometimes people don't understand that. So if you can explain to them that you are talking to a robot at first, but as you go back and forth, then you can say that you want to speak to somebody, and then you'll see Paula's name changes to something else. Now you're talking to a person live, so they can usually help.
And candidly, what I do with any chat, no matter in my personal life, I just did this with Verizon on Monday. Speak to a representative, I am one of those people. I am not someone who is going to sit there and go through with a robot. I immediately speak to a representative. So I will say that if you do that, I'm right there with you. So
Yeah. And I can say from our experience last year, because I've really pushed the chat feature, probably 95 to 98% of the issues that they're having are fixed as soon as they get that chat person. There are a couple that is, it's something just screwy or squirrely, however you want to say it. They have a certain situation and they do need to speak with somebody. But for the most part, that chat has been invaluable.
That's great. That's great. I'd love to hear that feedback then too. So, a couple of questions kind of related to at the centers. And this is one of those items that and Maria, I know she can obviously speak to this and hinted at it. Obviously, a lot of times at those service centers, they're still in training, might, not have everything fully understood. So items like this, if the letter is requested.
yeah, with the letter.
Yep.
Look, if you feel comfortable uploading the letter to your dashboard, you can do that. But Jodie will always come back to me and say, hey, we have drivers who are being told they need to do this. And then we go and send a reminder out to the field that no, in fact, you need to stop telling these people that they have to provide it because they do not. So, and I see here that I've heard the use of a landline is much better than a cell phone. No, there isn't. there's not much truth to that. Now, I know if you're trying to navigate the application on your cell phone, that's a separate issue. But in terms of calling the service centers, no, a landline or a cell phone is fine.
That's great. That's great to hear.
And
Then
for our older drivers, I'm sorry, for our older drivers, Maria, we just want to say too, if they're not comfortable doing the electronic version or the,
Yeah,
the-
then
or
they
they're
don't
gonna-
need to
they
do
can,
that,
they can
right?
just
Yep.
still, they can call in and use the PAT system just like
Yep.
normal.
Yeah, no one has to use the online system. The online system, think of it as something that is there for you if you want it. It has the bells and whistles, but if you want to just call and file your application or reopen your claim, you can do that. And you can then call in and file your weekly certifications without any need to use the computer. So.
perfect. Yeah, and that's a great point. I think that our partnership really shines through that in recognizing, hey, we've got some drivers that are very technologically prepared, and others that aren't.
Yeah,
There's always a way, and if there's an issue, please don't hesitate to reach out because
yeah, and to that point, I mean, I would rather not. Don't have folks spin their wheels. If they are having an issue, let Jodie know. Jodie emails me, and then we can just have someone call that person. So just don't waste time spinning wheels or getting yourself all twisted about. Just give Jodie the name and contact information, and she will reach out. It's amazing the difference between the people who have trouble with the application now versus when I first took this job. Between this presentation and coming to the annual convention, I think we've taught a lot of people how to navigate this system. There are still going to be people who are going to have trouble, and we would rather just get them on the phone, walk them through their issues, and send them on their way. So
absolutely. Real quick, I will say if anybody else has any more questions, please, make sure that you drop them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we will make sure that we can address them. I do want to also point out, last year, the UC Benefits website was updated, and there is now also a school bus frequently asked question page. This was a big help. I know Maria had said, hey, be prepared, we're working on this. And then she sent it over, and it's like, oh, this is phenomenal. This is great.
Yeah. So that's there on the website too. Yeah. So anything that you guys, if you have questions about, please feel free to reach out to Jodie. She can reach out to me, and we'll always be happy to help, whether it's just general information or questions about a specific bus driver's claim.
Absolutely. So I don't think we've had any more questions come through, but I do want to say, as a reminder, and as Maria said, as Jodie said, please feel free to reach out to Jodie. Please feel free to reach out to myself at the PSBA office. Always more than happy to try and help out with these items. If you have any follow-up questions, we are always prepared and available for this. And as I mentioned, this presentation will be available on the website through the members only portion this afternoon. And this webinar will also be posted on the website this afternoon. That one might take a little bit longer just because still learning the back end. If you haven't noticed, we got a new website. So that might just take a little bit longer, but we will make sure that we have both of those items up on the website at least by this week, the presentation by the end of today. And again, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And on that note, I just want to say thank you so incredibly much to Jodie with Reliance. She has been a great friend to the association in helping us navigate this process. And we are so incredibly fortunate to have Deputy Secretary Maria Macus join us as a partner, be a part of this, and help us, navigate this, trying to provide us with all the opportunities to work through it on our own, and we couldn't be more fortunate to have a partner like Maria helping us out.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So great. Excellent. Well, thank you all so much. Jodie, also thank you for running screens. I appreciate everyone's help while it was just me working on this. I know Ariana normally has a better touch than I do, and I'm fine with that. So hopefully you all will have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you all at the convention. Shameless plug, registration is open for the convention. Make sure you get registered, and we look forward to seeing you all in June. Great. Thanks all.